Hi guys, I'm here with Akshay and Manav today from Blockchain India as well as India DApp Fest. This is a very exciting episode because we typically don't get to interview that many stakeholders that are involved in the Indian crypto ecosystem. But I thought it would be good for our listeners to kind of get an overview on what's happening in India. It is a huge market. It has a lot of tech talent and talent otherwise. So would be super keen to talk to Manav as well as Akshay, who are trying to kind of spearhead both on the regulatory side as far as where crypto regulations go in India, but also in terms of creating awareness within the developer community as well as the startup community as far as this new industry is concerned. So welcome to the show, guys.
Hi, thank you, Tushar.
Thanks, Tushar, for having us.
So before we get into what you guys are trying to do, I wanted to get a quick sort of summary of what your journey has been like, both of yours, and how Blockchain India came about. Maybe starting with Akshay.
Yeah. So Tushar, Blockchain India essentially was envisioned when in 2015 September-ish, when me and another founders, there are five co-founders that brought this about. So me and Kashyap were, running our own companies from Tim Draper's fellowship in the Valley, and we realized that there was a lot of investments going on in the crypto space. And that time it was essentially about anything that had a payment gateway of cryptocurrencies involved. And we realized that there's something there happening, and specifically when the whole valley was buzzing about just cryptocurrencies. Imagine we go to a party on a Saturday night, and what we end up seeing is in the house, the ground floor, there's like 20 magazines lying down, and you would see the magazines showcasing a Bitcoin magazine written over, in a style where you can just manage that. And the first thing that catches your attention like that, you seem to begin that, what is it about? Let's start searching. And fortunately, when I exited from my live streaming startup in 2016 Marchish, Manav, me, Anirudh, who was, also, had started supporting a startup, which was again to do with developer adoption. We realized that, all of these people were together excited about blockchain.
Yeah, that's true. We were very excited at that time.
Yeah, so the idea was that we started it as a working group, just internally, six of us, four of us physically in Bangalore, two of us virtually joining on every Thursday when we met. And it was just about learning and discussing whatever we got to know that week, right? And quickly, in about 8 to 9 weeks, I think we realized that the idea is we're learning so fast. We want more people to be involved in the network. Let's have everyone join us. And Bangalore being so intellectually rewarding as it is, being the software capital of the country, it was so easy to get interest from people. And co-founders like Manav totally took it in Delhi. Kashyap took it in Hyderabad. Stefano came in to lead in Mumbai. So it was just like it started moving by itself, and we had in no time we started seeing from 8 people to 1,000 people in our meetups.
So yeah, our first event, to add to that, was in Bangalore, and we had around 20 people there. And was one of the most very interesting conversations that we had, to having 8 people in Delhi, then to also having 1,000 people in our own meetups. So we have seen the entire journey, where people not knowing about what blockchain is, not understanding what cryptos are, to looking at the boom, the time when everybody started realizing, oh wow, Bitcoin is at $20,000, and suddenly the world realizing that there is so much to it, and coming to that, to seeing the bearish market, to not people now realizing that there is no future to the. So we have actually seen the ecosystem grow, and with that we have grown, and we have also helped people understand and grow in this country with the community and with all our efforts that we have been doing.
And I think you've seen this when you were here.
Yes, absolutely. So for context, I think we met in the middle, I think late, so I think Q3 2017, 2018
Absolutely.
is when we met.
18, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I know we've been going a little bit back and forth. We've tried to schedule this podcast before, but it didn't happen. But I think, and we can talk a little bit about why it's happening now. So just a quick background in terms of what you guys are trying to achieve with Blockchain India. What is the goal of Blockchain India, and also like a little bit about the structure of Blockchain India? Is it not for profit, and you're just trying to kind of evangelize about this industry, or is the goal to kind of monetize it at some point? And well, I guess you could monetize it even if it's a non-profit, but is it something that's for profit or something that's completely not for profit?
Sure.
All right. So Blockchain India is basically started as a knowledge sharing platform. Yeah. So when Akshay, I mentioned earlier that we used to meet together and solve each other's doubts, we realized that we were learning so much, and we just thought opening it up and inviting more people to the to this discussion group so that we understand from everyone's perspective. And then we realized that there was a gap in where the ecosystem and the community in the country was understanding what about blockchain, about this entire decentralization, cryptocurrencies, to not completely understanding the prospects of this entire technology. So we decided to open up and have a knowledge sharing platform going on, where we basically are educating people, evangelizing around this technology for people to understand, and see what use cases can come out, what is the prospect of the future of this thing is. And our future goal is to make it an open innovation platform where we discuss and we evangelize around ideas and build products in an open innovation manner, so that everybody gets rewarded in that process.
Right. So just adding on top of it, so we've structured it on 4 pillars. The first one is, he mentioned evangelism, and that has to do more with the idea of what technology can do, what kind of solutions can be built, right? So more along the idea sharing piece. The second has to do with more skill set penetration, right? If you have to build those ideas, how do you build it if you don't have skills? The third one being having infrastructure support. How do you get them to, let's say, a co-working space wherein they work together, or probably get some help from you to incubate the right ideas or fund the right ideas, whatever infrastructural or resource network they need, right? And the last pillar being positive regulatory environment. That all of this only works when you have an experimental space while the world is wondering if this is going in the right direction or not. So all the 4 pillars kind of putting us together and taking it towards, as you mentioned, an open innovation network, right? Built on the ethos of not for profit, decentralized collaboration happening, right? So we've been trying to push some larger projects, haven't yet been able to do that because we're still struggling with people realizing how distributed collaboration, and without token being a part of it for now, how does that relate to any positive even return for themselves, right? So that, how does that model work? But we're definitely waiting towards the point wherein we can have probably, let's say, in the intermediary time, tokens working on the back end. But as and when we get some positive regulations, sort of switch that to a model wherein everybody gets rewarded for their contributions. And the idea is to align these towards goals that are super interesting, right? So, for example, something that's super interesting that has come about is autonomous driving space. Everybody is trying to figure out how can we utilize the different mapping APIs that are available towards gathering data from people, and also pay them at the same time, create high definition routes for all of these to work, or drones to work, and so all these things become so much possible when you have open collaboration happening. So that's something that keeps us excited.
I mean, that's great to hear, and especially the I think what you alluded to as well. It's kind of like a knowledge sharing platform, open. Anyone can kind of join the network. I think that's kind of what the industry stands for as well. So I know, just kind of building onto that, you have 4 chapters, if I'm not wrong, in Bangalore, Delhi, Hyderabad, and Mumbai. Could you talk a little bit more about what these chapters do? I guess they would kind of try to develop the local ecosystem, but do they have a mandate? Do they have to kind of, or do they meet up monthly, or is it more sort of ad hoc depending on if there's any exciting news or any exciting developments?
So, Mark, do I take that? Sure. So, how we structured this as is a core team that is looking at together global, I would say, sort of countrywide goals for us, right? Because we're focusing on India for now. We're running experiments, but nothing has worked to the point that we take it outside India for now. So the idea is that core team, which is registered as a not-for-profit, as a trust, right? They decide on the goals of this, right? So the first 2 years goal was building a blockchain ecosystem. As you mentioned clearly, local was the focus. right? And the idea was to have clearly laid out immediate goals, right? So we had to have like one meetup every 5 weeks. By that we mean definitely we failed at doing sometimes exactly in the fifth week, but now for the last 6 months we've been even doing meetups like in 1 month,
1 month,
right?
yeah.
Having two meetups at the same time. So now it's come to the point wherein everything is regularly happening, right? And more because of the DApp Fest, which everything is culminating towards the last 4 5 months. We've seen about 1,000 people participate, but again, the core ethos being idea sharing, knowledge share, because it is definitely a knowledge sharing platform, skills penetration. Any teams that want to come to India and showcase themselves, have them come in and be a part of all these meetups and interact with this network, right? At the same time, we're also trying to structure things towards creating a business model which is open, and but still whatever contributions that people make, they can easily, let's say if they put out like 4 hours a day, which is what currently is happening. We have like everybody who's in the core team gives 3 to 4 hours, right? So for example, you mentioned how does the 4 chapters sort of that structure work. So for us, there are 10 people in the core team, another few volunteers. I think we have one each, and Delhi has 2 volunteers. So we have almost about 15 people. And what happens is that all of us keep focusing on our meetups, right? At the same time, there's one person that makes sure that all the 4 meetups are aligned. So how we do that is not through being virtually there, but we want to be a part of that whole energy, right? So someone from the core team keeps traveling for a particular month's meetups, right? And this is basically it. Always happens on a Saturday, so never collides with work routines, and is sort of convenient for us. So that is happening, and now is when we're able to do one meetup in 5 weeks. We have, because there are four chapters, we have 1 week that everybody gets to take an off on. So that's basically, if you've missed something on the personal front,
You can take care of on that side.
yeah. But it's generally nice to sort of network and enjoy with everyone.
And meet the ecosystem people, like the community. It's always good to know, because every city has something different coming out from the ecosystem in the community. So you get to learn and you understand how the country and where the parts and what people are doing in different areas. So it's very interesting to know.
Yeah, and typically, just to give a more overview of what happens at these events, what are typically the kind of people that you see at these events? Is it more people who are trying to trade on with some of these cryptocurrencies? Is it more of the developers, more sort of entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs, or is it kind of like a equal mix across these 2-3 different categories?
So I will see, it keeps differing from city to city also, in terms of.
And also from price to price, depending on how high or low the prices are. Right?
Exactly on point, right? So I'll tell you, when it was about early, so 16, 17, it was majorly around people talking trash about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So we had to purposefully keep it away from trading things. But obviously, it's very easy to see that that's also a core of whatever's happening, right? You can definitely speculate, but there's in the stock market you also do that, right? So you can't just sort of not let that grow, and that's not even fair, to my opinion. But what we did was we focused on the technology aspect. So still we have almost about 63% of our community as developers, right? It was great to see that you first mentioned that India is known for the talent, the numbers from the tech standpoint. So we're definitely seeing that also in the community. But what's keen is that Mumbai brings a different flavor altogether. No matter what time of the market it is, they're going to show up and they're going to say what they want to say, right? So that really happens. And on the other hand, Hyderabad and Bangalore is more tech audience. So you'll definitely see more tech things happening in Bangalore and Hyderabad. Delhi is a mixture of both. So I would fairly say, if you want to look at an average, 60% developers, 40% rest, entrepreneurs, marketeers, investors,
enthusiasts, anybody.
Absolutely.
Sure.
So that's kind of how it works.
Right. And so you briefly mentioned India DApp Fest. Could you talk a little bit about what India DApp Fest is, even though it sounds pretty self-explanatory, but could you talk a little bit more about it? How did that come about and what are you trying to achieve by organizing India DApp Fest?
Absolutely. So Tushar, when I was a part of the Valley, what I really realized was, and this is I would relate more to a developing country standpoint and also to a standpoint wherein Indian developers sort of lacking opportunities because of the exposure that they get in India as well as the infrastructure that's available to them, right? So what I realized was there was some amazing things happening, and Indians were sort of able to contribute to that when they were in the West. But what we weren't able to do was essentially focus on ensuring that the West by itself does not have to take the burden of innovation for the whole of humanity, right? For example, if you're using space colonization as an example, if India tends to be, not India, I would say, if parts of the globe tend to be inhabitable, and countries don't allow the citizens from one country to come to another, how do you then look at space colonization? Is it just an issue for the West? No, it's issue for everyone, right? And as responsible people, we also want to contribute to that, right? And probably this might be also because we're not at the point where we have to think about putting food on the table. We come from decent amounts of, I would say, decent backgrounds which have hustled for the last 20, 30 years to be able to give us this privilege. But we definitely want to start that culture of innovating here. And if you see, the last 6 to 8 years have been about a lot of people going and hitting at this goal, right? So now when we at Blockchain India started things, we were looking at, can we help with building global firsts and making a point that we start contributing to the towards all of our problems and not just India's problems, right? And this was like a very positive, so to say, goal. But what we realized was, for a year and a half, trying to get things to work for a government that has definitely issues with the kind of facilities that we have in tier 1 cities, they're not yet there in tier 3 cities. So what the government is mainly focusing on is making sure what we take for granted is essentially penetrating to the tier 3 cities. While that's happening, it's very important for us to keep hustling, right? And we realize what we missed on the infrastructure global first vision, we can still do that on a DApp point of view, because the whole space is, if it's about an experiment of decentralization through distributed apps, we can power that experimentation and help all these networks to efficiently work towards, for example, as because we were talking about space colonization or any of the exponential technologies, so we can try helping all of us towards getting there. So that was something that was core to deciding to do India DApp Fest, right? If you saw what happened when you were here, a lot of people were talking about platforms, but you wouldn't see a lot of quality infrastructure platforms coming. But you would have already seen early signs of people trying to develop distributed apps over the platforms that are already out there. Now is the time for us to help them with our network, essentially get the next set of opportunities, right? By in terms of in terms of funds, in terms of getting the right mentors, right advisors, getting the visionaries aligned with their products, or probably follow visionaries. So for example, someone like Joe, Tim, or Naval Ravikant, for example. So sort of see where they are looking at this space growing and sort of enable them to synergize their movements according to that. So that is a focus of DApp Fest, and how we're doing that is realizing that so this whole space we sort of say is about conscious decentralization, and what that means is you'll see a lot of private use cases happening. They might not be working a lot in an open innovation way, but we can still see in terms of companies coming together, inter-industry, sort of working towards solving each other's problems by sharing some databases, right? And that to us is the start of this whole decentralization process. Now, that is the first thing that people can immediately see and relate to. At the same point, we have public blockchains, Ethereum, the EOS, so many doing things that probably, like, for example, Space Chain, right? A lot of things that are happening that are super visionary and that will only be totally decentralized networks, right? And for example, examples like Institute of Freedom, that's imagining a society that's completely decentralized, right, out of Zoom. So all of these ideas are visionary in its say. How do we get attention? So for example, if 20% of the community cares about contributing to public blockchains, let's do that. Though I think it's more 60% of the talent comes in because they want to be a part of the disruptive aspect of cryptocurrencies and blockchain. The rest 40% that enables this whole thing to be what do you say, sustainably in a business way happen is, sort of data security and privacy being an aspect, digital transformation being an aspect, industry 4.0 leading to what we call as society 3.0, right? And also what we're seeing is there are early experiments even from India sides with some of the startups that we're also working with, sort of working the future of workspace, trying to understand how probably enterprises as work environments will completely look different in a future format, right? So what that to us means is future of work is as important to be thought from a decentralized angle. And if we have any dApps working in that space, that'll be amazing to go there as well, right? So all of these spectrums sort of getting aligned, but our own particular belief is society 3.0, right? Which is essentially something that I think probably we would be, I don't know, I haven't figured out if this has been used before, but we sort of should be able to say that we coined this in the sense that, we saw industry 4.0 being about tech being so pervasive that all these industry environments become as efficient as possible, right? Now taking that to the point that it's not about inter-industry, even it's about intergovernmental, as I mentioned, probably about if we have some of the regions not being inhabitable anymore, how do we ensure that intergovernmental transactions are done in a more goal that aligns with the whole of humanity way, rather than just a particular nation's boundaries, right? If you see, the whole space represents global thinking. So how can we change the society towards having a global standpoint, not restricted to just physical or local boundaries, I would say, right? So that is another piece that we want to have everybody thinking upon, and we are getting some amazing people from all across the globe to champion all of these spaces, as well as share what is their vision and how does it align to these particular pillars, right? And we want to use all of that to create opportunities for everyone who comes and becomes a part of it. So yeah, so India DApp Fest is super exciting for us.
Yeah, no, I mean, it does sound exciting. And some of the points you touched on, I mean, I genuinely believe in those as well. I think a couple of things you talked about. So first of all, a lot of companies coming from India are now not just solving pain points within the Indian ecosystem, but kind of looking outward as well in the quote unquote traditional startup ecosystem as well. So you have companies like Oyo, Ola, Paytm, Byju's, all kind of looking outwards and not just focusing on India. You've talked about different kind of degrees of centralization versus decentralization, which makes sense as well. I mean, I think, again, I think going back to the entire blockchain versus crypto narrative, I mean, on the enterprise side, you have this narrative that, blockchain is good and crypto is bad. Whereas you have the sort of the rebels, the young people who are like, yeah, no, crypto is good and, crypto cannot run without, crypto is sort of the fuel to the engine that is blockchain. But I guess there is still some improvement from the enterprises, even if they just start sharing data amongst themselves and not just make it completely open. So that's one step forward. But I mean, that's super interesting. One of the things that we were talking about just before we started recording this interview was this roadshow that you did all across India in multiple cities. We've all heard a little bit about what the Indian government's stance has been, but I think I'm not sure if some of our listeners are still 100% aware of what this stance is and where do we stand and like what are kind of the next steps? Like where do we go from here as far as the Indian government is concerned?
All right. So as per the current scenario, Tushar, the RBI, the central bank, has asked all the banks not to deal with any company that is, or with any individuals who is using cryptos as a means of like their work is getting involved in any cryptos. So it's only a banking ban that is there. As such, from the government point of view, it is not legal nor illegal. Only the banks are not allowed to deal with any companies or individual who want to buy or sell cryptos. So that is where the Indian ecosystem lies. But saying that, that also stops us from actually, getting involved with anything in cryptos because we cannot actually get fiat, but we can do a P2P trading. That is something that is allowed right now. Through exchanges, we can do it. Secondly, since the ban, there has been a petition and a case going on in the Supreme Court, which is the apex court in the country, regarding what the regulation should be, and they had asked the government to submit a report, which the government will be submitting in July. And to supplement with that report, there have been individuals who have come out, and organizations that have put forward a report. And since we are the largest community in the country, the community has been for a long time telling us to also do something towards the regulation. So we decided to actually open a platform where people, the entire community, could come and discuss what they feel about the regulations, what they feel about this space. There should be regulations if they are positive about it, or they have a negative. As you said, blockchain good, crypto bad. So there is both kind of people out there in this community, in the ecosystem. So having a space for everybody to speak what they feel about it. And it is not only to do with one particular stakeholder, but every stakeholder in this ecosystem. So starting from developers, entrepreneurs, investors, marketeers, news bloggers, media channels, everybody who's a part of the crypto and blockchain space, community, people running communities come forward and actually talk about their experience in this industry, what they feel so can bring about the change, what if regulations come in, how the country as a whole will grow in economic terms, in terms of knowledge, and how India can actually be the next, be one of those countries providing, contributing to the fueling to the innovation of this world. And the motive is, after all these discussion that we have had, we are collating all these points in a form of report, which we'll be submitting to the government, so the government also understands and takes in, what people actually doing on the ground, and they realize that, what the people and the youngsters or non-youngsters also of this country who are working and who've been in this field for a long time are actually feeling and wanting to do.
Right. So just to add on top of it, right. So he mentioned that the community sort of started leading up to asking us to help them, right? And it's very important to point out the gravity of the situation. Banks not helping in India meant like even if you earn something, you can't spend it anywhere, right? So technically, in a space that does not yet have any sort of adoption happening, you're already facing problems in terms of using the coins that you've earned, right? Until and unless you can use that for some immediate things, it does not get towards mass adoption. So that was very important for us to realize, and that's how we also brought the fourth leg of a supportive regulatory environment, which sort of becomes very important for the whole ecosystem to grow, right? So we realized that this whole works if there is a positive regulatory environment. Something that was amazing to see. He's covered everything brilliantly, but on the ground we saw amazing maturity as well as amazing rebellion happening at the same time. People kind of asked him that where do we start the march from and where does it go till, right? It was technically about focused meetups and not any sort of on the road marches to happen. There was no street protests, as to say, right? But people were ready to do that, trying to ask us for how many hours do we have to march.
And from which area to which area are we going, and
right.
What is the motive? What are we going to say? Do we have banners ready? So people are very enthusiastic is because people are wanting to see this change come in.
Right. At the same time, what was amazing to see was everybody realized, everybody in the world noticed demonetization happening in India. So though there was positive sides, there were negative sides, but it was great to see that somebody brought about the point that banks have too much power, governments have too much power. Why cannot I hedge myself against the next time demonetization happens, right? So that was something that was beyond my point as to we really are looking at those safe ways for governments to print money that helps us. So that's actually bothering us with the value of money that we have sort of getting down, because inflation obviously hits us at some point or the other, right? And then demonetization happening, it was like a whole ruckus. How can we be related to a point wherein we don't have to be bothered about what a local government is doing? Because if we've earned money through our hard work, why can't we hedge it, at least that it retains value? So that was a fair point that we realized. On the other hand, we realized that there were law firms that were doing it exactly the right way. They were trying to take it to the government, have the right channels used for explaining to them why Bitcoin without crypto does not work. You're taking away the essence or the open innovation that will probably fuel solutions that might help a lot of our pressing problems to be solved. And there were examples quoted as how do you solve Delhi's pollution? Is the Delhi government as Delhi being a union capital, has it been able to do anything about the pollution that citizens are facing? How about looking at solving that kind of a problem with mobilizing the whole of Delhi citizens together, and sort of helping them with every positive thing they do. For example, if they use an Uber pool instead of driving their own car to work every day, why don't we give them money that can definitely be for one way be linked to Bitcoin, or another way be linked out to our fiat money. Like, nobody cares, but we care about how much pollution of the fuel is getting burned, right? So this all can be solved through technology like this, and it's high time we look at it for the merits, right? Something that was amazing to see in Hyderabad was a founder who came out of IIT, and he said that all of us have been believing in the fact that these educational universities are championing intellects for all of our societies. Tell me why then, if some of the top universities are focusing on crypto economics, are focusing on specific courses led on how blockchain can be used for good, or like blockchain for impact. If all that is happening, why can't we? And blockchain, you mean both private and public, right? It's not like whatever suits you, you just keep that to yourself, right? So why not realize that if an educational university that is one of the best in the world, if they are coming up with something like this, there must be some value to it, right? And all of these points, sort of brought us to the point also that somebody who was really senior pointed out that being a part of this meetup, I got to understand, and this was in Bangalore. Being a part of this meetup, I understand this open town hall leg in Bangalore. That there is a lot of value, right? And probably the right way to percolate this or let this happen in terms of government is to have, smaller experiments. For example, blockchain for charity, right? Work and use them as an example of saying that there is positive. At the same time, saying that the government, you have to understand, has some issues with saying that money laundering, how do they tax, because they're using those taxes to build up the economy, right? If taxation is a problem, how do you stop money laundering, illegitimate transactions, and facilitate taxation, right? So what we realized was, and this is something that's amazingly going to come out also, because it's been sort of highlighted twice or thrice, Tushar, that we need to build out solutions to these problems, right? So what we're doing is launching the report with all of the ecosystem being there, using the hackathon leg at the India DApp Fest to power some of these solutions, right? So there are multi-track hackathons happening. Some of it are enterprise focused, some of it are government focused. But what we're trying to also do is do something for enabling mass adoption to happen, right? And if we build out a right example, probably everyone can use that all across the globe, right? So for example, in an open innovation way, how can we sort of relay transactions that are happening in, let's say, the top 4 public networks, and relay those onto a chain that just uses immutability aspect to record what transactions are happening, right? And then using that immutable aspect, that immutable record, to say that guys who are decision makers in the government, that you can use this ledger to now say that this guy owns this amount of tax, right? And just that becomes possible because all of the crypto exchanges are also ready to come on board and say that the nodes that are aligned to us, we're anyways doing KYCs, right? Why don't we give government the access to understanding who these nodes belong to, and then reach out to them to pay whatever transaction they've done in a crypto way, pay taxes on top of that. So what that does is there's an immediate belief, or what do you say, bridge between the paradigm we're living in to the paradigm we're trying to go to, right? And if we come out with any such solutions, we might enable them to come into our environment and just realize it, what we're trying to see, what we're trying to showcase them, the value that this space has, right? So that is something that's happening in India DApp Fest, and we're keenly excited about what we do with that and where does it head if we have any credible solutions coming out there.
True. And just to add to that, we also have a track regarding how the paradigm shift can happen, and that's called conscious decentralization. So how exactly, from a centralized world, how can we slowly move towards a decentralized world? So there's a track there which is again, we're having some really interesting people coming in to, talk about it and have a discussion, have a panel discussion on that. So for people who are interested to know how that entire paradigm shift will happen and how the change will occur, something interesting to go.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's super exciting, guys. I mean, I love the enthusiasm as well. I can feel the energy that you guys are bringing to the table. Just one last point before we wrap up. I know we're kind of exceeding the half an hour mark, and we try to keep these podcasts not too long to be kind of friendly to our audiences. So I know in general, some of the larger exchanges are trying to get more active in the Indian crypto ecosystem. They see the value, like we discussed. The market is huge. There's talent, makes for a very good combination. I know Binance Labs is trying to get more and more popular. Binance is organizing meetups. The KuCoin CEO I saw very recently tweeted out for looking for support in the Indian ecosystem. And one other notable development recently from India has been Matic, which was struggling for a very long time to raise capital, is now bypassing all traditional VC methods of raising capital and going straight on the Binance Launchpad. And so that's been one of the, I think, biggest success stories coming out of India. What are some of the good projects or good applications that you're seeing, or that one can hope to see as part of the India DApp Fest? Or what are some of the exciting developments happening in India at the moment, which you guys are super excited about?
Yeah, so I think I'll take first a shot at doing this, right? So one, we've been trying to, so we have done update in terms of helping Matic, but I don't think it's yet enough as an ecosystem organization. But we're definitely helping in whatever capacity we can, because we feel this is one of those projects that'll say that there is work happening here, and no matter if you support it from a governmental standpoint or not, people are not going to stop, right? If they want to create an impact, they will find a way. So they're definitely a huge story for all of Indian standpoint, so to say. Some amazing dApps that we're seeing happening are Masmic, right? I think something that we've been continuously
talking about and discussing it.
I mean, they're building like a Quora, distributed Quora sort of a platform. And,
sorry, I didn't catch the name. What is it called?
Masmic. It's called Masmic.
How do you spell it?
Masmic.
Okay.
Right. So Masmic, what they're doing is, and it's great to see that some Indian investors have also come to support them, and that's like a first that's happening here as well. So Masmic is building out this amazing decentralized Quora as an idea, and what's great to see is you can get paid for the knowledge that you put out there, but obviously the community has to come about using sort of TCRs as a way to say that this is the right answer, or this is the right way things are happening on the ground. So that is a super interesting example. And what we saw was when they were pitching in Delhi in one of our meetups, there was absolutely about, I think, if they were like, I think 70, 80 people, 50 people were just waiting for their chances to ask them questions as to how they can be involved, right? So that's amazing. There's Murmur. Murmur is trying to build a social network on top of EOS. And they're
very interesting things that they're doing there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you have Insta DApp, you have Get New, you have Bank of Hodlers who are more looking at secondary market on top of cryptocurrencies standpoint. You have Easter Egg that's sort of now pivoted to a model they called TEDx now. But what they're using is they're giving they're lending on top of cryptocurrencies to employees that, let's say, so you would have seen if you're working for a company, the last 5 days of the month, you have a cash crunch and you try to figure out how to spend that money. So they're going after that as a solution, and they're using lending over cryptocurrencies to doing that, right? So that's amazing to see. Amazing exchanges are trying out new ways. I mean, Unicoin did not succeed with the sort of crypto ATM, but I would say that was one gutsy move. I would have hoped for that to succeed, but that's one thing. Then Shivom working on genomics, right? They've raised quite a lot of money, and it's great to see that they're building out a whole full-fledged developer ecosystem that gets supplemented with knowledge on the part of genomics from the West and Blockchain Research Institute and all of that. So that's amazing to see. Apart from that, Stella doing some amazing stuff here. Doing building on their associations with banks to enable multi regional transactions to happen through banks, and having stellar payments network built underneath, right? So that's amazing to see. There is a Ripple Blockchain Research Institute that's partnered with IIT Bombay. So what they're doing is IIT Bombay is also coming. There are some amazing ideas, Electris network being one, which sort of has to do with this is this is a great experiment. I know there have been some related ones, but what they're saying is, why not have a coin for, let's say, a particular category of workers, right? So for example, software developers, how can we have a network for just software developers and have coins just specific to them, right? And different societal networks have different coins, right? And they have some amazing insights they follow it up with. So this is based out of Pune. It was amazing to see when they pitched in Mumbai. There was like pin drop silence, and everybody was listening to what they were saying.
What they were saying and how they were presenting.
Right, and then Origraph. Origraph is doing some amazing stuff. It's more on the enterprise angle, not on the consumer end, on the public angle, public blockchain side. But they are definitely pushing along some things in the gaming as well as enterprise space. They don't want to reveal it too much at this point in time, so I'll refrain there. But they're building a good patching between gamers and enterprises and doing all on top of Origraph. So that's great to see as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty comprehensive list.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the names sound familiar to me, and for some of the projects, I actually know the founders. But there was a lot of projects that I wasn't aware of. So I think that's great. And what I'll do is link up a lot of these companies in the show notes so that some of our listeners can check these out. But I think that's a great point to kind of wrap up this episode. Before we disconnect, any last thoughts? Anything that you'd like to say to the audience?
Absolutely. So I think one thing that's happening is definitely India is sort of participating with contributing to developers. So what you said with Binance Labs focusing on projects coming out of these developers is another thing. But what's super interesting to see is under the hood there are so many new projects and attempts being done to facilitate those unique ideas. And I would say it would be great if any of you are in the consumer side space or if you've matured towards looking at giving solutions out to enterprises. It would be great to have you on board at India DApp Fest, right, Tushar? Particularly you, because I think you are the bridge between taking things from for example a Matic standpoint, wherein Indian cool startups can get to Singapore and then probably to the West, and involve everyone to build these amazing ideas out together, right? I think a lot of this will help the early adoption piece and to stand together towards achieving that. So just to facilitate that, I'd like to invite all of you to participate.
Yeah, that's right. So just adding to that, only as we had spoken about Society 3.0 and not having any countries and having one whole ecosystem of the global decentralized ecosystem. So Singapore being one very open ecosystem and India coming up one. So we really like people to come down so that we can bridge that gap and actually try making that decentralized ecosystem between these two countries right now, so that we can have that experiment and start moving towards a larger ecosystem involving other countries and other ecosystems to go about, so that we can actually look at and have how we can have a more decentralized movement, sort of say. So that can be a start from where we are looking to start from India DApp Fest. So all like-minded people love to have them interact and see how best this particular technology can move.
Yeah. So just to conclude that, we have 5-6 networks globally joining hands. So for example, in Portugal, Jessica, who led the whole, I would say, cultish movement there. Starfish Network from San Francisco, Gary from Distillating, who's like a community player in London. All of these guys sort of coming together. I'd definitely encourage Tushar, and we'll probably use this as a point to also talk upon in the later, once the conversation is done here. But the idea is that, this is a global movement, right? And we would want to be a part of enabling that whole bridge to happen so that the decentralization movement becomes more concrete. So if any of the viewers are believers of the core ethos, I think you need to be there supporting out, the early pillars being laid
for the entire network.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, again, just to reiterate, love the enthusiasm, guys. It's amazing, and happy to do my bit in terms of whatever I can help or add value. But I think that's a great moment to kind of wrap up this episode. Akshay, Manav, thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thank you, Tushar.
Yes, thank you, Tushar, for having us. This is amazing. We finally made it happen.
Yes, sorry for all the reschedules.
Hey, come on.
No,